Hello. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I am the Honorable Lord Ian the Green in the SCA, and we are going to today we are going to be looking at manuscripts and figuring out how to make a ductus from the information that is on the page that we see. So to do that, I need to start sharing screen. Of course, I didn't quite get everything set up, so first thing we're going to see is, well, the Green Man calligraphy group when I share the page. All right. From there, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the digital scriptorium. And at the digital scriptorium, we're going to switch over to advanced search. So the question for you guys and ladies is very simple. What's your interest? What kind of manuscript do you want to see? What date, what time period, what country?
Book of Hours, 1450, Belgium.
Book of Hours. Date. Do you mind if I do 1430 to 1470?
Sure.
I find you get wider and sometimes more interesting results. And you said Belgium. So country of origin. Hey, look, I can pick Belgium. Now, you don't have to hit the limit results to manuscripts with limit results to manuscripts with images. I will learn how to read and talk at the same time. But I'm gonna because, well, for this purposes, it's just better. All right, hey, looks like we got some. Berkeley, Cambridge, whatever. The Berkeley one has 19 available images. I always like having more images than less. So we'll click on that one. It's the #1 search result. Ooh, that's a pretty start of the calendar. Calendars, right. Calendars tend to show the prettiest calligraphy that's available. I'm just zooming in. That doesn't mean that it has to be the thing. But that also means that you're not going to get the typical result either. So. But we can look in here a little bit and see what kind of script would people say this probably is.
Textura quadrata.
Okay. And if I switch back, and the reason I ask is that it's just so that we know. We'll take, we have a lot of pictures of pretty stuff, which is nice, but it's not what we're looking for today. Folio 35, we'll zoom in on that image. This has more writing. So yes, we have some nice capitals, but we're not really interested in the capitals so much. We're interested in majuscules and minuscules. Definitely we have feet on these things, so it's not synpedibus. SLRO maybe, hard to tell. Do we want to use this page or do we want to keep looking?
Maybe we're going to go find a more interesting book.
All right. We can also, let's see if there's a more interesting book. I'm just going to scroll down to see if there's a page that has, more of what we might be interested in. And yeah.
Something that's not a textura or a
okay, not a textura. Well, okay. Definitely get out of that. So let's see if we can find, here's one with 192. The Bernanke rare book manuscripts. Love Bernanke. So when we were looking in mid 15th century, we're going to run into a lot of Gothic.
Yeah, that's probably my mistake.
That one looks more precise than textura.
I agree.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the little clubs.
It doesn't have the diamonds on the ends of the letters.
Right, which makes it non-quadrata.
Mm-hmm.
The little diamonds are quadrants, which is how it got the name quadrata.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to avoid Gothics in general, 15th century might not be your best choice. If you're just trying to stay away from quadrata, it'll work. And this one seems to have split serifs.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more natural, a little bit more rounded.
I'm not even sure they're writing on lines. Oh, they're the lines.
They are not writing on lines, they are writing between lines.
Mm-hmm. You'll see some of it's quite crooked.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's, you know.
That second last line, it's got quite, when you get to the 15, it's like, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's got quite the arc there.
Yeah, go straight up like that. It does a really good job. But I mean, if you look at the next one here with the MYNE and it looks like SS, that M, none of the M downstrokes end in the same spot.
Mm-mm.
Now, we can pick on them for that, or we can appreciate the fact that perfection is not necessary.
And that's a nice thing to know.
Well,
Yeah.
and it depends on what the manuscript is.
Exactly.
If it's just a daily records, they weren't as careful about it.
Yep. And we can always go back and take a look at what this is.
It is written in Batard by 2 scribes.
Yep. But what's it for?
1470.
It's a 1470 script. Miniature. Subject. Catholic Church Prayers and Devotion, Book of Hours. So it is prayers and devotions, but the scribe that did this, it looks to me like the person that got it was far more interested in gold and pretty stuff than they were in necessarily that the page was written well. Now that's just an opinion, I don't know, because it's lacking a lot of illumination, which is expensive too. But the question becomes, do you want to use—
what are the size of the pages as well? Because that would also impact it, right?
Yes, it would. And so, yeah, that's important to note.
Because with Book of Hours, they were often little books.
Yeah, carried around, usually about the size of a person's hand, maybe a little bit smaller. Yeah. And they always tell you, but, you know, figuring out what's what.
70 by 52 millimeters, that's small.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Thank you for catching that. I'm like, I can catch the lineage. I haven't found the millimeter. Yeah.
So that's 3. So 7 millimeters is just shy of 3 inches. Right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so is the
2 by
page
3.
size, so is the page size 120 by 90?
Yeah.
And then the text size is 70 by 52?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or the writing portion?
The writing is about 2 by 3 inches.
Yeah. So
tiny. So we shouldn't pick on them because we can't write that small.
I wouldn't pick on anyone.
I can only write that small if I'm working under a magnifying glass.
Right. Yeah. So it's a beautiful book, but probably not useful for our purposes today. And that's kind of the fun of this, is that you get to go around and you get to look at things. Oh, here's one that has 467 pages available. Now that's a lot. Book of Hours. Yep, it's in Latin.
Also tiny, 6 by 4.
Okay. And that's, yeah, and Books of Hours are always going to be tiny. Well, not always, but they're usually going to be pretty small.
Lovely.
As I say, this one is,
That's Latin,
it's smooth.
sort of.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, that's Latin, isn't it?
Yes, it's got medieval and more modern Latin both in it.
Okay.
The ink has not stood up to time, but I definitely like this writing better.
It's fun. There's lots of variations in it too.
Yeah.
Definitely more flow.
Yeah, but it also looks like it's a form of Batard as well with the SFs.
Yeah, the SCFs. This is certainly a Batard. I love the B that's at the bottom, and then you go up, you see another B there. That's definitely a Batard B. So I'm not a. Do we want to use this one, or do we want to go to try and see if we can find something else entirely?
Why don't we go a bit earlier in time?
I'm happy to do that. And that means we come back out of our search all the way out.
And if we want to avoid the Gothic hands, how about looking for Carolingian, like something that would put us in Carolingian?
All right, so 800 to 1100. That's not 1100. That's 1100. And I'm going to get rid of Book of Hours just because they
didn't exist.
There you go. And
now we're still looking in Belgium for the country of origin. Are we going to change that?
Yeah, I was going to ask, can we just go to any country, or does somebody want to have a specific place to look?
Let's just do any country because we'll get a broad European reference. Right?
Yep. No, that's not. No. All right. I think I need to clear out my search. Hold on a second. Let me do that again. I messed something up. I apologize.
Maybe it needs 0800. It says enter a 4-digit here.
Ah, I'm catching that.
Good catch.
Yeah, because it tells you that at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been using this particular manuscript search for more than a decade, and they've made little changes along the way. And so every once in a while I get caught on something like that they've changed. Nice catch. There we go. Ooh, faded. All right. So what we have here, parchment, region, Bavaria, so in Germany. Caroline minuscule, they say. And bigger. Whoever's been catching the sizes, I'm not seeing them as quickly as you.
It's right under part 1 where it says description, just above country.
So it's
okay. I got it now.
219 by 195.
Yeah, that is a foot almost.
Yes.
So this is much bigger.
219 is 8 inches.
What's interesting is that the number of scribes is attributed to be 3. So there should actually be 3 different types or 3 different hands in here.
Exactly. Very good. And let's see, what kind of book is this supposed to be? Oh, this is written by Bede. I'm going to assume that means the Venerable Bede. So this will be fun.
And it refers to constellations. So is it sort of a scientific book of some kind?
Yeah, it could be.
Well, the title is De Natura Rerum, so I don't know what rerum is.
Yep. Drawing of the celestial sphere surrounded the constellation of Drago, but it's got writing too. Oh yeah, that's Carolingian. Man, is that small Carolingian. on such a large page. That's a fun set of letters there. EO, maybe RX, but I think that's supposed to be an abbreviation. I know the lines are supposed to be abbreviations. I'm going to see if I can get slightly bigger page, bigger writing. We'll see. A lot of constellations. That's awesome. That's a little bit easier, not much bigger. I wish we could use this, but it's honestly going to be too much. It's just not going to print out well. Yeah, but now
that page definitely looks like they didn't use lines because the lines go in different directions. If you look where the U is and the next line down, it slowly rises to the right.
And the interlinear is variable.
Yeah.
They had a ball.
They did. And that's the neat thing, that we're all doing this, because all of that actually is going to go into your ductus. It is. Like, how many spaces, how tall is your letter? What's your X height? Is there a line between your written lines? Is there two? It's all really is a part of the ductus, besides just how do you draw the letters. Man, now I got a manuscript I got to come back to sometime.
Yeah, because in that one there, it looks like the ascenders and descenders, like the next line doesn't start until the bottom of the descenders when you look at the spacing.
Yeah. So this probably, I mean, you can see that this line goes down and then this one kind of comes up, but it looks like there's probably supposed to be two lines in between, and that lets your ascenders and your descenders not fight.
Well, when you, where your arrow is, if you go straight across to the D, oh, sorry, go up 2 lines above, right where you are, go to the D in the middle, to your left, and then the G above it. That appears to be the spacing, if you look through it, that they've used, except in some cases, it's bigger.
Yeah, like here.
Yes.
So, and I'm not seeing any impressions. I'm not seeing faded ink lines.
No.
Doesn't mean that they're not there, it just means not seen.
Well, there's pinpricks down the edge of the page.
Nice catch.
It was on that page.
I'm going to go back to the last one. I was hoping I could just catch it on that one.
Yeah.
So this one. No?
No, next one, that one.
Look on the left-hand
Oh,
side.
yeah. Yeah, I see.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So they pricked and maybe they used chalk or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe the guy just like lines of sissies.
Interesting that the pricks stop here, but the lines don't start there. Although, I don't know, I think that's the line for the capitals on the other page, on the recto. Huh.
Well, the interesting thing is if you look at the corners, the pages aren't square.
Yeah.
This one looks like it's been trimmed though.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It looks trimmed.
The other page we were looking at the top left-hand corner, it didn't actually go to the corner. Is it that one?
Right.
There, yeah.
Yeah, the top of it is dropped.
Yeah. Like you can see
Cut it crooked
under it.
Yep. By the way, if you haven't ever cut parchment, let me tell you, cutting square on parchment it's a skill, and it is not easy. So I have nothing but respect for the people that could do that.
and I draw attention to it because this is not absolutely perfect, which is a guidance to any of us that even in period, they were not absolutely so precise. It's a handmade book, and it shows that because it has those idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, you can see right there on that image on the first two words that Q on the second word, the size of it as it goes through the word changes.
Yes.
Mm.
The X height changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
The Q is almost 2/3 the X height of the M.
Yeah. And the N is slightly bigger than the M.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also variations in the width of the letters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you if you look at his M's, he's fairly consistent in how he makes his M's.
The form of the M is similar every time.
Yeah. But if you look at his N's, they aren't as consistent because the width of the letter varies from time to time.
And the branching varies as well.
And you really see the variance in the M in the second line that starts with the red S, and it says in singular, I believe. And there's two in a row, and they're definitely different.
This R is almost not a Carolingian R. It's almost a Luxial.
Mm. And it's different than the N at the end of the line in the middle of the last word. I'm
lost.
Just where are you? Okay, just go into the top of this, like the long word at the end of the line. The third letter is an R, is it not?
Yeah.
I don't know. Three lines down there, that word. But if you look at that R there versus the R and at the beginning of the line, they're not the same.
Oh yeah, I see what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So this R and that R.
Yeah. They're not quite the same.
Well, yeah, and the only reason I know that's an R is because Scorpius, I think Scorpion. I don't do Latin, so I don't know C-O-R-N or C-O-Y-N. But
yeah.
So yeah. Well, let me see if I can do this. Copy the image. And the way I do it is then I go to a simple program like Paint and I paste it back on.
You could also download it from the previous screen.
You can, absolutely.
Okay.
And if you're going to do that, and then it allows you to steal it out, and you can pick out exactly the pieces and parts you want to look at. And it's really, really great that way. And the way you do that for those is go ahead and close that off. And then you have view image and you have download image. And then you can download the image wherever you want it to go for your particular purposes. My stream. So, there we go. Zoom in on it. You want to get it as big as you can because that way when you're dealing with it later, it'll do all the things you want. The thing is that they've changed how they do the download, and I'm not, maybe it's because, let me close that down. I'm not seeing a simple download button anymore, but I can still do this and save the image. And so, you know, I go over here and I save it to my scribal and my manuscripts. You probably want to put it in a folder with a name on it, make it a lot easier to find. But that is certainly a way to do that. And then you can open it up in this program. So once I'm at this point, you can actually you do a lot of viewing. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. If you zoom in, you're going to get less clarity. So don't zoom in too far. If I zoom to 100%, this is what I've got with this.
We're looking at your Facebook page right now.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're looking at the Green Man calligraphy page.
Interesting. I don't know why. Oh, I know why I did that, because I'm still screen sharing, but I'm not sharing where I'm looking. I'm looking at the thing. All right. How's that?
That's better.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Let me do that again. Sorry about that. You can zoom in. Most programs will let you zoom in. Paint will let you zoom in. When you do that, though, you start to lose some clarity. And this is where having downloaded the large one sometimes is helpful. You often get a better look at things without losing clarity. So I'm going to put this back to 100%. And the nice thing that you can do, go to home, is that you can actually start messing with this now. And we're all talking about lines and making sure that were they flat or not? Well, let's find out. Yeah, look how far off that is.
Mm-hmm.
We finally have a flat line to compare it to, and that ain't it. That's not flat. So you can thin it down, make it a little bit bigger. What works for you? And we can see here that I didn't make it a perfectly flat line, but still in comparison.
Now, part of that will be from the photograph of the manuscript.
Right.
As it's a bound book, they don't lay flat necessarily.
Yep.
So where you see on that inside center, that's the page curling to the center,
yep,
partially. So it's slightly exaggerated in this forms.
Right, and I was about to show that. It's really, that's okay. It's really, and that's where I was headed. It's really easy to get caught up with, oh, this isn't flat. Well, we know it's not flat, but it isn't flat because it isn't flat on my screen. This is why it's not flat.
But if it's consistently tilted in one direction, all the writing, you could probably rotate the page so it is straight.
Exactly. But if you look at this, if I go along the bottom of the letters here, then at a certain point, the more I hit the bottom of and get on, you notice that some of them are still floating. Some of them are still lower. But that's actually a lot flatter than what we thought it was, isn't it?
Especially if the spacing from line to line is consistent.
Yep. And if I put that over the top of that, and I go to that one, now we can start figuring out what spacing is. That's a lot of space between lines, by the way. That's two written spaces. Because if you can see my cursor is roughly, it's a little bit higher than an X height, but it's just over that center line. So that center point to the bottom plus a little is an X height. All right. 1. There we go. 1, 2. We're at 2, 2.5. And again, I draw that line there. No, they're not perfect, but they're not as off as it looked. And if you ever take your own pictures, you realize the perspective from your camera really changes things. And one of the ways that you can tell on this that it's really changing things is that's pretty flat based on our perspective. It's toward the middle of the page. The closer you get to the middle of the page, it'll flatten out. these will, the ones that are the higher up you go, they get off at an angle. At the bottom, they get it off at an angle. So this is less of a line issue on not writing flat than it is a perspective issue based on lenses. But they're still writing up and down, and we saw examples of when that was happening. That didn't change, it's not as bad as it looks. All right, so we've done a lot of talking about the codicology of this, like the physical aspects of where the writing is on the page in respect to each other. What pen angle are we at here? Probably. And for that, I might need to zoom in a little for you. Oop, that's more than a little. And I'll zoom out just a touch. Can we get a pen angle from this?
30%.
I'd guess 20 degrees.
Yeah, I was going to say 25. Yeah.
Pretty flat,
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing in a lot of different ways of saying that. Why are we saying that? You're right. I agree with everything that's being said, but for the purposes of the class, let's suss out why we're saying that.
Well, I held up my nib up to the H, that's after scriptus, and judge the angle from that downstroke, the top of the downstroke.
Okay. Now, did you do that based off the red line or based off the brown line or based off of what?
Just as it is on the page. I didn't subtract the angle of a red or a brown line.
Okay.
I used the crossbar in the letter E because looking across it looks, and using the brown line as the bottom.
Yep.
That's where I got the slightly higher angle than is it Eleanor did?
And I just looked at the top of the M's.
Yep. Yeah. And all of those are excellent ways of doing it. Test that in different places. If you're really going to truly pull a ductus out of something like this, you want to test that in a variety of places on the line, in a variety of places on a page. Why? Because they're not machines. The people that wrote these, the scribes that wrote these, are not machines. They're not going to put their pen down exactly the same way every time on the page. You're going to get, for lack of a better term, an average based on on where that pen was as it was being written or at the start of a letter. So one of the ones, I look at that the crotch on the E, is a great place to go in a manuscript like, when you're doing Carolingian. But also that I, if we look down here with the big S and we go all the way to the end and we see INSI, the I and the N here show a pen angle of about 30, 20, somewhere in there. So yeah, between 20 and 30 based on this. Now what you can do is cut it out. If you want to cut out a letter and stick it on another one, or I have a tendency of just opening up a Word document of some kind. In this case, it's an open source document. And hopefully I didn't ruin my page. And I will cut that, come over here, and paste it on. If I want to, I can open it up really big. As you can see, it can create a lot of blur. However, even that blur, I can see the hard area here and go, huh, that looks to be XYZ angle. And I can small it down, move it over, and I go back. And if I want to learn how to write the H, I go look for more H's. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to start stealing letters out of this. I'm going to look at A's, or do we want to look at it? What letter do we want to look at to try and learn how to write it? you want to use the A, the E, S's, B's?
Well, my inclination would be to use an O.
Okay, and why is that your inclination?
Because in most hands, when you're learning them, the O is one of the first that you ever learn because it dictates the underlying structure of the hand.
Okay.
Is it round and square? Is it oval? Is it oval upright or oval horizontal?
Yep. So not that one. That one. And you notice I ain't perfect at this either. So don't worry about being perfect. That's one O stolen. One of the things that I find interesting about these O's is almost none of them are closed.
So are you cut and pasting those O's then? So where are you pasting them to? Because we're not seeing that.
Oh, that's right. I will show you in a second after I pull another O out.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That's the second O that I pulled out. I'm sure there's a third O I can grab. There's a good
an O in Scorpio. Scorpius.
Yep. Excuse me. I am on the tail end of a cold.
Well, that's right. You were sick.
Yeah. My daughter got me sick. That's okay. I'll let her live. All right. New share. Hello, new share. That page.
That's
All
an
right.
interesting letter.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
Now
what I talked about earlier is when I pulled the H open, it gets pretty darn fuzzy. But you can still get the idea that this H has a good roughly 30-degree angle here when you do that. So it is, just because it's fuzzy doesn't mean it's not useful, is kind of the point there. All right. So with these O's, they're pretty small, as we mentioned before, and that's why I was a little concerned about using this page. No, I don't know what that is, but we're going to move you. We're going to open it up a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. So this is written by the Venerable Bede, and something that I learned about the people that the intellectuals that we've looked at is they didn't necessarily write the best way, but that's okay. They wrote well. So this O that's the biggest O and kind of in the center of the screen, closest to the center of the screen. When we look at that, we're seeing thicks, we're seeing thins, and that's giving us clues of how ink was put on the page, but that does not necessitate that's how the pen moved. Ink can blob, and ink can be pretty viscous and sometimes move in ways that the pen is not intending it to move. So I always say, if you're going to make a ductus from a manuscript, you should get many and several examples, because they're going to show you different things. That doesn't mean that necessarily that errors were made, but that it'll give you a clue overall of what was intended. Again, these are pretty fuzzy, so not the best examples, but these are workable. The first O here, what pen angle would you say this first O starts off at?
Really steep.
5.
I heard two different things, one at a time if we can. I'm sorry. So ladies first.
Oh, no, I simply said it seemed to be really steep, a steep angle.
I agree. It seems to be very steep. But yet when we get down to the bottom here, it's not so steep. So is it that it really was steep, or is it that the pen didn't go down flat and started writing? Well, let's take a look at the other ones. If we look at the middle O, that's not very steep, and it gets pulled down pretty thick. So I would say the one on the left just didn't get started well. Because if we look at the third one, that doesn't look particularly steep to me.
Mhm.
But I agree, the first one looks super steep. It looks like it's probably about 70, 80 degrees.
Oh, okay.
The interesting thing I see on the two images, the center one and the right one, is that though the inside of the right side of that image looks different, the outside of that curve is fairly consistent. So it could be, like you said, that the ink dragged when the letter was formed, and that resulted in that sort of bulge on the right one, where it fell down into the middle of the letter.
Yep, it could. Absolutely.
So the outside of that image is a little bit more consistent than the inside of the letter.
Yep. And I would say even on the first one that's over here, it's still following the idea. It's not doing as good of a job, but it's still following that idea that we that we see at the start of the top right of this O. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I know that I'm the instructor on this one, but just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that I'm right. It means this is what I'm seeing. So that's why I'm like, am I, how do you guys see this is kind of how I should say, ask the question. I know that at the bottom of these where we would see a connecting stroke, we're not seeing a high angle. What angle would you, I mean, none of these are exactly the same, but what angle would you say they roughly are at?
I would say that that's closer to the 20 to 25.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. And one of the things you can do, is print this out, set it down, draw your flat line where it's supposed to be, figure out where the flat angle is for their pen, draw that line, make sure it actually touches where you're at, in this case, the bottom of the O, and then get out a
compass?
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word all of a sudden. I was gonna say protractor, and I'm like, that ain't it. Get out a compass and measure it. I did this for a page that was written by Alcuin of York. I forget when exactly it was dated to, but it was written by Alcuin of York, Song of Solomon. It's at the Bloomington Library, and I actually was able to handle the page so I could get better pictures than what I have here. And man, that guy couldn't keep his pen angle the same anywhere. But once I took enough of them, it averaged out that he was writing Carolingian minuscule at around a 32-degree angle. And we know that with Carolingian is low, and we typically say 30-degree angle. And we say 30-degree angle because in the SCA, because that's what Drogan wrote. That's what Drogan told us to do. But the more and more you look at it, the more and more we see that 30 degrees might be what was done in those manuscripts, but it's not required to stay there, is it? I mean, we're at 2025 here.
Could we go back to the original page for a minute?
I believe we can. I just got to get you shared there.
I find it interesting that Drogan says 30%. David Harris says 35.
Yeah. And no, I closed that page stupidly. That's okay. We can find it. We'll just go back to it.
Oh.
Yeah, my fault. I shouldn't have closed it. All right. So we were looking
0800 to 1100. You forgot your 0.
Thank you. I'm going to have to get in that habit now. And limit search results. And which one was it?
Rerum naturum.
I heard you, but I didn't hear you. Say that one more time.
Rerum naturum.
Is it on one of the results that's up here on the page?
Let me look.
Scroll down a bit, I think.
Was
Hang
that
on.
one that had like 400 images or something?
No, that was the previous one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to do a Control F. No. Denied. Faded pink. I think it's this one.
Okay.
Yep, it's this one.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
There you are there.
Yep.
Drawings of the constellations.
Which one did I grab? I just grabbed.
That's the one that you're right on, is the one with the 3 characters down the side.
Yeah.
So view image.
That one.
All right, we're here. What did you want?
Well, if you go back up towards the first line, we were talking about the shape of the M's and the N's when we were talking about this.
Yes.
And I get the impression that he was in a bit of a hurry, because if you look at the M's and the N's early in the words and early on the line, they tend to stay fairly upright and consistent. And as he gets further towards the end, there's more of a mountain shape. They spread out a bit, like he's trying to rush the letter. You can see that more in the ends. Earlier they're more, the 2 uprights are fairly parallel, and as he gets further along, they sort of turn into a pyramid kind of shape. And to me, that sort of indicates that somebody was in a hurry to get to the next word or the next letter.
And I am cautious to agree with you. I see what you're seeing.
Well, it's just sort of the way it looks.
Right. And the reason why I'm cautious to agree with you on that is that the lens has issue, as opposed to, so let's take a look down at near the middle of the page and see if we're still seeing that.
Well, or it could just be his basic tendency with the N is to make it more open, more of a pyramid instead of a tower. You see what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm seeing
it. Could just be it could be his tendency.
Yep.
Which is possible in period, because people that study these things have found that those sort of consistent idiosyncrasies that they see in a particular calligrapher's hand will allow them to identify them in other manuscripts that they contributed to calligraphy, because you see the same sort of style, and often it will be one letter that will cue them.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yep.
And that's how, like, we looked at a couple where it said that 2 scribes or 3 scribes contributed to this, and that is also how they will identify that, because there will be a consistent idiosyncrasy with a particular letter, which is not present on all pages, and so the letters form differently, which generally will indicate a 2nd or 3rd scribe.
We don't know who wrote the Book of Kells, but we know darn well that it was 3 scribes that wrote it.
Interesting. I wonder if we could find a page that shows a different hand.
We can, but the purposes of this, and we can make a class. Yeah. The purpose of this class is to figure out right from this page. It's a great question, and we'll play with that in another time.
Right.
All right, so back to the page with the letter.
Okay.
So we know that we're at about a 20-25 degree pen angle. And we know that this outer form here is doing pretty good. So when we pull this, is this supposed to go straight down, or is this supposed to be a curve on the left O, on the left side of the O?
The first stroke.
Yeah, that first, what probably was the first stroke. We don't know it's the first stroke. So is the left side of the O supposed to be straight or curved? So on the first O, it's curved. On the second O, it's more straight. On the third O, it's more curved. So to me, this lends me to believe that it's supposed to be curved, but like anybody who does calligraphy, anybody who writes by hand, we're not perfect every time.
Mm-hmm.
So it is supposed to be curved. Is this supposed to be a wide curve or kind of not? I mean, I don't know how to say it a better way.
See, this looks like a vertical oval O as opposed to a circle.
Yes, I agree.
That's what I was saying when I first suggested the O, is that how the O is shaped will often dictate how other letters are done. Because the first stroke of the O is also the opening stroke of the C, of the E, and other letters. So
and the second stroke of the O is also this stroke of the H up here.
Yeah, as well as the second stroke of the E, the second stroke of the B, the P, like once you understand the underlying structure of the alphabet, you can see from the O the form of much. The only thing you're missing are upright straight lines.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this O is not uncial-esque. It's not a wide flat O. It has become, even though the pen angle is similar to uncial, it has become kind of more smushed and not as wide and open. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to look at uprights and stuff, we do have the H that's here. I don't want to move you. I want you to open up. So we do have a serif here. It's not really a beak serif, but I don't know what I would call that. How would we want to try and address that H at the serif at the top?
I'd like to see more samples before I venture a guess.
How smart of you. All right, sorry, I'm not making fun of you. I really do actually mean that. And I should have anticipated that, and I didn't. So well done on you. I'm trying to get H's that are a little bit kind of clear of other letters, but not getting too many of them. Oh, that's a good one. So cut that out. I'll see you at the other page, and after I put this up here over here a bit, and then let's get one more H at least.
This is an interesting methodology. I find when I look at a page of script that I sort of get overwhelmed by the amount of information in it.
Yes.
And it's really hard to sort of focus in on one thing. Yeah. It's so much easier when you can pick them out and look at them.
I totally agree. It's kind of how I came up with this. I had been given advice on how to deal with things and went, that's really good advice, but I'm not handling manuscripts and I'm certainly not going to be marking them up. So this is what I came with from the advice that I was given. There is so much on that page and it is so busy. There is so much going on. I completely agree. There we go. Back to see if I can find one more. Or if I should just call it quits. because we do have a bunch of other uprights, but I'm going to steal two.
There's an H over there.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. Bring it over, paste it on, make it a little bigger, and then let you folks in on it. There we go. You should be able to see the page now.
There we go.
Yep, put the O's out of the way and make the H's down here in the center. So we have 3 H's, including one that's slightly modified that we're not going to get information from the bottom on because of the underline there. However, there's a lot of good information that we can get from these. So we do not have club serifs. We did not use club serifs. I don't know what to call these for serifs. I honestly don't. Does anybody else have an idea? I'm a little more technical on their serifs than I am.
I would call it a beaked serif.
You would call it a beaked serif. Okay, I'm not going to argue. Yes?
Largely because of that buildup. Now, with the second H, the beak is heading to the right, which is quite modern. The last one, the beak is heading to the left, which is traditional.
Right.
It's not flat topped like a duck serif.
Yeah.
But it is sort of a on the fly. I mean, I think some of the stuff I kind of like, can you sharpen your quill, please?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. And so the fourth image is more consistent with the Carolingian manuscript.
Correct.
Yep.
But when I want to go back to the comment that someone made earlier about it almost seems like this was written quickly.
I agree.
When you look at the first image and you look at the fourth image, it almost looks like the second stroke was started to the left of the upright.
Yep.
To some degree. It's not, the pen is not hitting the paper consistently, which is why you get some of those variations. At least it looks that way.
So one of the things that we are talking around here, and I just kind of want to make sure that that gets pointed out as part of the class, is that manuscripts are not written by machines. They are written by people, and people are imperfect. And because they are imperfect, you're going to see a lot of imperfections on the page. And so we're talking about what those imperfections could be. We're talking about a quill pen that probably needs to be sharpened. We're talking about somebody who is more interested in getting the word on the paper than getting the letter form perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things need to be taken into consideration when you're going to be making a ductus, because the ductus is the pure form of the letter. It's the concept of exactitude that we are attempting to reach. There's nothing on this page that is doing that whatsoever. And so we need to work around the idea that we're not going to get perfect, but we're also not, we shouldn't really be trying to. We're trying to pull a ductus out of this that we can work with. In the end, what that means is we're going to try and emulate their strokes. We're going to try and emulate their pen angle. We're going to try and emulate how they built a serif or didn't, or didn't make a serif, I should say. We're going to try and emulate how they ended a stroke, whether it's a connector or a non-connector. But we're not trying to learn we're not trying to copy this scribe's handwriting. We're trying to ductus. And then once we've figured out all those different forms, then we go, okay, I've done all that. how do I want this to look based on all the information that I'm doing and still be honest and hold true to what's on my page?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been talking around it. I just wanted to point that out and then kind of go to take it to its end point. So is the pen angle on the H still about 25, 30 degrees? And if so, where are you getting that from for the H? Because we beat the serif to death. The guy needs to sharpen his pen and needs to slow down. Got it.
I would say that yes, we are, if you look at the second stroke on the H's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the angle of the start of the second stroke.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I completely agree. I think we also see it on the serifs that are not blobbed. The first H has a blob serif.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And this third H kind of has a blob serif, if there's a serif there at all, if he was even bothering. So yeah, the right stroke, and you notice I'm not saying first stroke and second stroke because there's no requirement for the ascender to be the first stroke. There's no requirement for the body, for the belly of the H to be the second stroke. That is a choice.
True. I guess I prefer those terms because when you're looking at letter spacing, if you're doing it writing from left to right,
that's what you're going to do.
That's what you're going to do, right?
But
this is not Arabic.
No, it's not. It's good Latin lettering.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm careful at this point to say left, right, or middle, top, bottom, is because when you get to your ductus, which is going to tell yourself and tell others how to write it, that's when you determine, that's what I want for my first stroke. That's what I want for my second stroke. This is how I want my serif stroke. And so it's not wrong to call them that necessarily. It is a little premature as you're looking at it on the page, though. It's probably what you're going to do.
The other thing also is that if you're backhanded and left-handed like I am, you have a tendency to form your letters rather differently and align your page differently. Yep. So first and second stroke are not necessarily relevant. But from the point of view of discussion on this, when we say second stroke, the angle of the second stroke, we all know what we're talking about.
Right. And so I'm hoping to change the wording slightly.
Okay.
So that it's not about first stroke, second stroke, it's about left and right of the image.
Mm-hmm.
So that everyone can form it their way without being forced into thinking of it in a right-handed or world, for lack of a better way of saying it. Because right and left are not the only way to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we've got that. This stroke, it does pull straight down for the ascender stroke. Is the ascender the same X height as the belly of the H?
Except in the fourth image, I think.
Well, the second one is a little off too.
I would say, and we haven't worked out the X height of the pen to the X height yet, but I would say, excuse me, that the ascender is 3/4 the height of the body. Now that's me just taking my fingers up and holding the bottom to the top of the H and then going up. And every single time I do that, the ascender is just a little bit shorter. Now, if I wanted to work this out precisely, I'm going to take out a divider, which is the kind of compass that you use to draw a circle, but instead of having a drawing implement, it's got another sharp point on it. And I'm going to measure that X height, and I'm going to go over to the ascender, and I'm going to measure that based on, with that exact divider, and see if that's correct once I have this printed out on the page. Because my perception of what I'm seeing on the screen might be wrong. I might be anchoring it wrong, meaning that I've done the first X height, but maybe I should have moved my finger up a little bit or down a little bit based on where the waistline should be. The waistline theoretically should be at the very top of the stroke of that of the H on the right-hand side. But I honestly think the ascender is about 2/3 to 3/4 the X height. It's not half, it's taller than that, but I don't think it's the same height. Has anybody else tested it? So file, print. And we're at 1 hour and 15 minutes on the class. Do we want to keep going, or do you want to turn this into a second class?
I'd like to pursue this more on a second class personally. We've barely touched on the subject, I think.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right. So is that, I didn't, because the printer was working, was that followed up later, or do it continue now?
No, follow up, do a second class.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to have to run.
Yeah.
Right. We will do a second class on this and continue forward. The discussion has been fantastic. Somebody put something in the chat.
I'd also go and have a look at what Edward Johnson wrote on the 7 steps to developing a ductus.
Yep.
That's a good resource.
Yep. Oh, and you can download it online for free.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in his handbook?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he has a 7, I think it's 7 steps or 11 steps on developing your own ductus.
Share that to the group.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, let me, meeting controls, new share. Pause share, stop share, there it is. It's really easy to go deep on this kind of stuff. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Thank you everyone for coming.